Hello everybody and welcome to my YouTube channel. Out in here enjoying nature. So I just wanted to jump on and talk to you a little bit about trauma. So we all have trauma, right? We all have traumas from either childhood. Maybe we were abused or abandoned or neglected as a child. Or maybe we had some relationships that resulted in some trauma. Could have had a car accident or near-death experience. There are many ways that we can experience trauma, and everybody's perception of trauma is different. So what might be traumatic to me, being a hypersensitive, empathetic individual, sometimes I feel a little bit more, I think, than the average bear. However, there's nothing wrong with that. And I used to think for my majority of my life that it was a curse, but it's actually a blessing to be able to feel so deeply and to be compassionate and empathetic towards yourself and towards other people. But I had a really hard time with it, and the last few years I'm just kind of starting to feel my way around and be able to navigate, so to speak, through it, right? Part of it is being empathetic and hypersensitive is recognizing things that belong to you and things that don't belong to you. So being sensitive and empathetic, sometimes we pick up, well, I'm not going to say sometimes, but we pick up on other people's energies, traumas, bad moods, emotions, and everything. And it's hard sometimes to separate that from knowing that they belong to you or they don't, right? So I just want to reflect on these traumas, and I'm trying not to step on all these snails here. Maybe I should just stop. So we all have traumas in life, and what happens is we store these in our subconscious minds, and they create stories, right? They create stories of our lives, right? And these stories repeat over and over and over again, right? So how do you recognize this, and how do you go about getting rid of, or healing, not getting rid, but you want to heal yourselves of these traumas so that the stories don't keep going on repeat, right? So I've been digging deep within myself and healing a lot of past wounds and stuff like that. And every time I think that I'm close to conquering such a story or healing, I find that it just resurfaces, it comes back, right? So obviously that tells me that I have more healing to do in this area, right? And it manifests itself as triggers. Sometimes what other people say and do, and words that they speak triggers your story or your trauma, right? So the first thing you want to do is be aware of what you're thinking, right? What are your stories? What are you telling yourself about the world, about yourself? What are you perceiving, right? Because for myself, I mean, I had a great childhood. It wasn't perfect by all means, but I had two wonderful, loving parents. I wasn't abused. I didn't have anything traumatic happen to me in my childhood. However, I was, and there's nothing wrong with this, but I was very naive in my young adulthood, very trusting, and approached life with an open heart, and it got me hurt. And it's not a bad thing, it's not a good thing that I was hurt. It was a lesson that I needed to learn, right? And sometimes we store these traumas and these lessons for years until we figure them out and release them. And these stories, they create anxiety and tension until we learn how to move through the trauma, right? So when you're looking within, you will begin to recognize certain stories or patterns that you hold within yourself, and most of them are no longer true. Like the trauma's long past, the incident's long past. However, you're holding this in your subconscious mind, right? And your ego will keep you there where it's comfortable, right? So an example of this is, I don't do labels anymore, but I was diagnosed with anxiety, depression, panic attacks, and fibromyalgia at 25 years old. And I believed this story. I believed that this is something I was going to have for life. This is something that I was going to have to deal with. I was miserable most days because the pain was just ridiculous and unbearable. And you know yourself, when you're not feeling well, you just get miserable. You get sick and tired of being sick and tired. But I realized that this is a story that I was telling myself all the time, that I was sick and I had fibromyalgia. And once I started recognizing the story that I was creating, the symptoms started to dissipate on their own. So, and I'm not saying that this isn't like the case for everybody, but normally there's a story, why I was telling myself that I had all these aches and pains and that blah 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 blah, the stories went on and on. I don't know what my reasoning was for that, and maybe it was just built up trauma and suppressed emotions, and that's what I'm thinking. Exactly what it was is emotions and traumas that were suppressed in my body that were manifested into physical symptoms and ailments. But the key is to listen to your stories in yourself, in your mind, right? Go within and listen to the stories you're telling yourself, because we have thousands and thousands of thoughts every single day. And if you listen to these thoughts that you're having, you can pick up on, if you're honest enough with yourself and truthful enough with yourself, you can pick up on the stories that you tell yourself, right? There's always a story behind your issue, or your manifested physical illness, right? It could be you're scared of abandonment, so when you keep complaining about aches and pains and stuff, it keeps people sympathetic towards you and giving you attention, even though it's not even the right attention. And this might not even be your story. Like, everybody has a different story. So You need to pay attention to what your stories are that you're telling yourself in your mind, right? Because this is where all problems come from, is your mind, the stories you're telling yourself, right? So you are like perfect exactly the way that you are. There is nothing to achieve. There is nothing to do but be in the present moment and live and go with the flow of life. And if you can't do this and you can't clear your mind and be full of mindfulness and presence, then you have a story. You have a story that you need to address within, right? And it can be as simple as, like, the other day, my husband mentioned the word broke, and my blood pressure rose, and it created a whole story around that in my head. And for a good hour or so, I was just feeding the story with more stories, right? What if this happens? What if that happens? What if blah, 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 right? I just kept adding to the story, right? Adding and adding and adding to the story. And all it stemmed from was a friggin' word, right? That's it. It's all that took to trigger me was one friggin' word, right? So I'm not going to get into why that word is a trigger for me or anything like that, but it was one word that sent me on a wild goose chase in my own head, right? And when I recognized this as playing out as a story and adding more stories, I was able to wrap up the story. And instead of resisting what was being presented and coming up, I was able to sit with it and feel it and then release it. And that's what we're supposed to be doing. So whenever we feel like a good thing, like joy and happiness and stuff like that, we have no problem feeling those emotions at all. But whenever something uncomfortable comes up that we don't want to feel, we push it down, and we ignore it, and we think it's just going to go away on its own. That's not how it works. So we're quit labeling what's good and what's bad, right? So joy is no better than sadness. It's no better than sadness. It's a label that we're putting on it. We're labeling feelings as good and bad. And there's no label. There's no judgment, and there's no label. As soon as you quit labeling and judging everything, these things can come up and to be healed, right? And how do you heal them? So you let them rise. You let the emotion and the energy within you rise, uncomfortable as it is sometimes. You let that rise in you, and you breathe through it, and you just be present with the sensations in your body and what the emotion is bringing about for you. And if you do this, a lot of times you'll find that it just dissipates and it doesn't come back up. And you know what? If it's deep enough, it could keep reoccurring. It could keep coming up, but then you keep sitting with it and you keep letting it come up, and you don't resist it, and you let be what is, right? So we're human. We all have this. We all have these emotions, and we all have these traumas. And when we fix our stories and our traumas and start doing the healing and the inner work, your whole outer reality shifts and changes because you're not holding on to those stories. You create your own reality by your thoughts. So if you're always thinking in the future and creating anxious thoughts, then you're going to have a anxiety-filled, anxious life, right? And sometimes this anxiety and these thoughts have been with us for so long that we don't even know how to live without them, or we don't even really know who we're gonna even be when we drop the stories. And that's okay. It's okay to not know, right? Because when you go with the flow of life and you live in the present moment, there's nothing to know. You just are. You just be. You just flow. And when you live in this state, you'll find that everything just flows naturally in and out of your life. You're not holding, you're not suppressing, or any of that stuff, right? You're not living out of trauma, and you're not living out of your head. You're living just in the present moment. And when you do that, your whole outer reality opens up for you. And it just becomes this beautiful symphony of life and abundance and all that good stuff. But it's hard. It's hard. It's baby steps. But the first step is to catch yourself with the thought and sit with it, or the story. Recognizing the stories in your head and then clearing them is the first step to healing. And when your mind reflects your reality. So when you heal all your traumas and your stories and you fix yourself from within, it reflects in your outer world, as within, so without, as above, so below. So instead of running and resisting your stories, sit with your story, because it's part of you and it has been part of you. But don't judge it and don't call yourself names. Just sit with it. Don't label it. Don't judge it. Don't resist it. It's just there. It's nothing. It's nothing but a story you created somewhere on your journey, right? And you don't need the outdated program in the story anymore. So just let it go. You just let it go. And it's so simple to just let it go. But it's like layers. So you peel back one layer and you surface another one and another one. And it's sometimes never ending. But after you've been doing it for a while, you start having realizations and all that good stuff, and you start realizing that these are the stories that you created yourself to protect yourself and to keep yourself safe, because that's what you thought that you had to do, and that's not what you have to do. What you have to do is you have to feel everything that comes up in your life, in your world, through your lens. You are the pupil, and you're seeing through your own lens. So change your thought patterns, change your story, and you change your life. So I want everybody to have a great day. Get out in nature, drink lots of water, take care of your body, take care of your mind, and let's get to healing. Have a good one.